This is the 6th grade Study Island Day 7 answer key video. Jeremy is cutting a board into pieces that are 1 2/3 feet long. The board itself is 14 1/4 feet long. How many 1 2/3 feet long pieces will Jeremy be able to cut? So if I were to sketch this picture, he has a board that's 14 1/4 feet long, and he wants to cut up pieces that are 1 2/3 long. I want to know how many of these pieces does he end up with. So I'm going to divide 14 1/4 divided by 1 2/3. Now to divide, I have to change these mixed numbers into improper fractions. To do that, I'm going to do 4 times 14, which is 56, plus the 1 gives me 57. The denominator stays the same, fourths. I'm going to do the same thing with 1 2/3. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 2 is 5/3. Now to divide, I'm going to keep, change, flip, or a better way of saying it is multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal, which is 3/5. Now nothing cancels. When I multiply 57 times 3, I get 171. 4 times 5 is 20. Now I have to change that back into a mixed number. So I'm going to divide 171 by 20. Goes in 8 times. 8 times 20 is 160. When I subtract, I get 11. So I get 8 11/20. However, we want to know how many full pieces that Jeremy was able to cut out. There's 8 full pieces, so the answer is A. In this problem, I'm going to divide 4 3/4 divided by 3. So what I have to do is I have to make this mixed number improper. To do that, I'm going to multiply 4 times 4 is 16, plus 3 is 19/4, divided by, now I have to make 3 a fraction. To make 3 a fraction, you put it over 1. Now I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal, or keep, change, flip. Now I take a look, nothing cancels, so I'm going to multiply across. 19 times 1 is 19. 4 times 3 is 12. Now this is an improper fraction, so I have to divide. 12 goes into 19 one time. I multiply, I get 12. When I subtract, I get 7. So it's 1 7/12, which is C. Select the situation that describes the expression given below. 1 3/5 divided by 1/5. Basically, this means you have something that is 1 3/5 and you're going to cut it up into 1/5 pieces, or divide it up into 1/5 pieces. So if I take a look at A, Gene has 1 3/5 pounds of grapes. He gives 1/5 of a pound to Rory. So that would actually be subtraction, so that one doesn't work. Elroy cuts 1 3/5 meters of rope into pieces that are 1/5 of a meter long. I believe that's our winner, but we're going to check. Let's check C. Vaughn runs around a jogging track 1 3/5 times. The jogging track is 1/5 of a kilometer long. That's actually multiplication, so that one doesn't work. Janie is given 1 3/5 cups of flour for making cookies. She only uses 1/5 of a cup of flour. That would be subtraction. So my final answer is B. We're going to match each scenario with the equation that can be used to model the scenario. So let's start off with 3/4 divided by 1/2. If I look at my scenarios, these are the two that have the numbers 3/4 and 1/2 in them. I'm going to start with the bottom one. How many 1/2 pound burgers can be made from 3/4 of a pound of meat? So you're starting off with 3/4 pounds of meat, and you're cutting it up or dividing it up into 1/2 pieces. So that problem is actually going to go right here. Let's do the next one. I'm going to look at these two. Those numbers are 1/4 and 2/3, so I'm going to be looking at this box. So let's start with the top one. Dylan takes 1/4 of an hour to walk a mile. How far can he walk in 2/3 of an hour? The easiest way to do this is to set up a proportion. 1/4 of an hour gives you 1 mile. Therefore, 2/3 of an hour is going to give me how many miles? Now to solve this, you cross multiply. 2/3 times 1, which is 2/3, divided by the 1/4. That's my winner. So that one is actually going to go down here. My final two have to do with the flags placed and the width of a rectangle. Let's start with the flags are placed every 1/10 of a mile on a road. How many flags are in a 1/2 mile span? That's actually going to be division. You have 1/2 and you're cutting it up into 1/10 pieces. So this block is going to go right here. I'm going to divide 4½ divided by 5. What I have to do first is change this into a mixed number. 4 times 2 is 8, plus the 1 gives me 9/2. I'm going to change 5 into a fraction. To do that, you put it over 1. Then you're going to multiply by the reciprocal, or keep change flip. When I multiply straight across, I get 9/10, or C. Clara has a package of 6 cookies she wants to share equally among her friends. If Clara makes sure that each piece of cookie will be 3/5 of a cookie, she can share her cookies among how many friends? So you have 6 cookies, and you're dividing them into 3/5 pieces. So you're going to change 6 into a fraction. Then you multiply by the reciprocal, or keep change flip. Now, 3 and 6 can cancel. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 6 divided by 3 is 2. Now when I multiply across, I get 10 over 1, or 10, so she can share them with 10 of her friends. William is putting up signs on the edge of the road every 1/16 of a mile. He just put a sign down and he has 7/8 of a mile road left in which to place his signs. He wants to determine how many more signs he should put on the edge of the road. So he has 7/8, and he's cutting it up into pieces that are 1/16 long. So now you're going to multiply by the reciprocal, or keep change flip. So I notice that 8 and 16 can cancel, because 8 divides evenly into both. So 8 divided by 8 is 1, 16 divided by 8 is 2. Now when I multiply across, I get 14 over 1, or 14 signs. The width of a rectangular piece of cloth is 4/5 of a meter. So the width is 4/5. The area of the cloth is 6 2/5 square meters. What is the length of the cloth? So to find the length, I have to take the area divided by the width. So the area is 6 2/5. I'm going to divide by 4/5. I have to change 6 2/5 into an improper fraction. 5 times 6 is 30, plus 2 gives me 32/5, divided by 4/5. Now I'm going to take 32/5 and multiply by the reciprocal, or keep change flip. Now some things can cancel here. So 5 can go into 5 once, and this 5 once. 4 can go into 4 once, and into 32 8 times. Now when I multiply across, I get 8 over 1, or 8, which would be D. Jenny has a piece of fabric that is 1 1/2 yards long. She cuts the fabric into 4 equal pieces. She then uses one of the pieces to make small pillows for her sister's dolls. Each pillow is 3/16 of a yard long. So what I want to start off doing is actually finding what the length of each of these blocks are. So I'm going to take 1 1/2, and I'm going to divide that into 4 pieces. So I have to change 1 1/2 to an improper fraction by doing 2 times 1 is 2. 2 plus 1 gives me 3/2. Now I'm going to change 4 into a fraction, so I put it over 1. Now I'm going to keep change flip, or multiply by the reciprocal, and I get 3/8. So I know one of these boxes is 3/8 of a yard long. So now I'm going to take that 3/8 and I'm going to cut that up into 3/16 pieces. I want to know how many pieces I'll get. So 3/8 divided by 3/16. I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal, or keep change flip. Now I have some cancellations here. So 3 divided by 3 is 1. 8 goes into 8 once. 16 divided by 8 is 2. When I multiply across, I get 2 over 1, or 2 pieces. So the answer is B. So I'm given the equation 3/5 divided by 1/5 equals blank. So I have to first choose the story that can be represented by this equation, then select the correct quotient. So story A talks about Marcos having 3/5 of a pizza, and he gives his friend 1/5 of it. That isn't dividing, that is actually subtracting. Paula has a rope that's 3/5 of a yard long, and she removes 1/5 of the rope. Again, that's subtraction. Fred has 3/5 of a gallon of water and evenly pours the water into glasses that can hold 1/5. That one is going to be division because I'm starting with 3/5 and I'm breaking it up into 1/5 containers. Let's just check D. Sasha is 3/5 of a mile from school. She walks 1/5 of the distance. Again, that's subtraction. So story C is correct. Now to finish this problem, I actually have to divide. So 3/5 divided by 1/5. I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. So they end up canceling. The 5 divided by 5 is 1. When I multiply across, I get 3 over 1, or 3. So the second part of my answer is W. Ms. Jackson has 26 1/4 cups of flour. She separates it equally into 7 canisters. She uses all the flour in one of the canisters to bake cakes. So she's going to use just this much flour. So my first job is to figure out how much flour that is. So I'm going to take 26 1/4 and divide by 7. When I change this into an improper fraction, 26 times 4 is 104, plus 1 is 105 over 4, divided by 7 over 1. Going to multiply by the reciprocal. Now when I multiply across, I get 105 over 28. That's an improper fraction, so I'm going to change that into a mixed number by dividing. So 105 divided by 28. 28 goes in 3 times. 3 times 28 gives me 84. When I subtract, I end up with 21. So 3 and 21 28ths. Now 21 28ths can actually simplify. 7 goes into both, so that it's actually just 3 3/4. So that tells me that one of these blocks is 3 3/4. Now she's using one of those blocks to make cakes. Each cake needs 3/4 of a cup of flour. So you're going to start with 3 3/4. And you're going to divide it up into 3/4 cups. You want to change this into an improper fraction. 4 times 3 is 12, plus 3 is 15/4, divided by 3/4. Then I want to multiply by the reciprocal. Now some canceling can happen here. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 15 divided by 3 is 5. When I multiply across, I get 5 over 1, or 5 cakes. Ms. Jackson can bake 5 cakes. So considering the equation 5 1/2 divided by 1/4 equals n, we're going to select all the story problems that could be answered by solving the equation, then select the correct value of n. So if I look at this first one, Andy pours a 5 1/2 liter jug of bleach into 1/4 liter bottles. That is division because you're starting with 5 1/4 and you're breaking it up into 1/4 pieces, so that would work. The next one, a loaf of bread is 5 1/2 inches long. How many 1/4 inch slices can be cut? That is also division because you're starting with 5 1/2 and you're cutting it up into 1/4 pieces. The last one, Cynthia runs around the track 5 1/2 times. The track is 1/4 of a mile long. That's actually multiplication, so that one does not work. Now what I have to do is I have to find the answer. So I'm going to change 5 1/2 into an improper fraction by doing 2 times 5 is 10 plus 1 is 11/2. Then I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal or keep change flip. Now 2 and 4 can cancel. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. When I multiply across, I get 22 over 1, which is just 22. So the final part of my problem is 22. So these are my three choices.